that hasn't at one point in their lives wanted to change something about themselves? Whether that's your appearance, whether that's a behavior you don't like, or just a habit that you know is bad for you, but you just can't give up. In fact, most of us probably feel like there's things we want or need to change on a regular basis. Well, let me give you the good news. God doesn't need us to change to have a relationship with him. If you spend any amount of time in the vineyard, you will quickly pick up some Wimberisms, which is John Wimber, the founder of the vineyard. He had these brilliant one-liners that he always pulled out, and you use them over and over again. And you will get to know them very quickly if you spend any amount of time here in the vineyard. And one of his Wimberisms was, "Come as you are." John Wimber wanted his church and his ministry to replicate that of Jesus. He made it very clear that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together to live a life for Christ. As Jesus said in Mark 2:17, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. And as a church movement, we've kind of added a bit to John's original quote. And now we will tend to say, come as you are, but don't stay that way. Just as Jesus transformed lives through his ministry, so can we still be transformed today through a relationship with him. He invites us in, warts and all, but he wants to transform our lives, to better them through a connection with him. But the problem is, we all know change is hard. And most of the time, although we want to change, we don't always know the best way to go about it. Some of us will just dig in and try harder. Some of us, it's just too much, we'll just give up. Whilst others will just learn to live with whatever it is we don't like. We have that thought of, oh, it's actually not that bad, I can deal with it, it's fine. But we live in a world that tells us that constantly, that we can only do things through our own strength, our own willpower. And if you're not able to change that thing you don't like, then you've only got yourself to blame. So when I was younger, my mum used to love to tell the story of how she quit smoking. She'd smoked for about 10 years, but the day she found out she was pregnant with me, she stopped and never smoked again. You could see that she used to love to tell this story, and people would smile with that thin lip. Oh, that's great, wonderful, great for you, you know. And they're all struggling still. My dad was the absolute opposite. It was a different story. More attempts to stop than I could count. Countless rounds of nagging from me. And it was only in the last few years of his life that he was able to quit the habit that he'd known was bad for him for a very long time. You know, most of us will be like my dad, trying, stumbling, trying again, failing again, and trying again. We find ourselves in a loop of determination to change that thing we don't like. Sometimes we'll succeed, others we won't. And when we fail, we get bitter, we get angry about it, frustrated with our own lack of willpower, believing that if we just did better, we could be better. But the problem isn't that we can't change, but that we're going about it the wrong way. We've been taught by the world that if we just try harder, have more self-discipline, we should be able to do better, to be better. But the thing is that as Christians, we know better. We know that if we spend too much time focusing inwards on ourselves and our problems, and what we need to do to change, then we lose sight of the true perspective. It's not about what we can do to change in our strength, but learning to partner with our Father to bring about the change we want to see in our lives. We don't need to clean ourselves up, to free ourselves of all our bad habits, to draw closer to him. In fact, it's the complete opposite. As we get closer to God, his presence helps us to shed our bad habits, helps us to transform ourselves from the inside out. Change is a gift to be received, not a goal to be achieved. I'm just going to say that again. Change is a gift to be received, not a goal to be achieved. Now, that's not to say that we can all just sit back and do absolutely nothing and let God do all the work. Our relationship with him is just that. It's a relationship. And we all know relationships that are one-sided never work out. They don't just happen. They have to be worked at. So, what do we need to do? Well, 2 Corinthians 3:16 says, "But whenever someone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. For the Lord is the Spirit, and whenever the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom." So, all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed in his glorious image. So what does this mean for us? Well, it speaks about the veil being taken away. As we navigate this world, we're increasingly surrounded by people who are focused on themselves. For some of us, we've been those people. Perhaps some days we still are those people. So blinded by our own thoughts and feelings that we're oblivious to those of others. But as we draw closer to God, that veil is lifted. We can begin to see ourselves and our place in the world in a new light. We start to be transformed into the image of the one that we draw closer to. Now, the good news is that God doesn't draw us closer through pressure. He doesn't say we have to spend time with him. It's not through shame. It's not through acts or willpower, but through relationship. The more time you spend with God in relationship with him, the greater and stronger the transformation. You know, it's easy to become disheartened when change doesn't happen instantly. We're all very impatient creatures, I know I am. We want change and we want it now. We don't want to wait. But the definition of transformation is a fundamental shift, a complete change in form. This is something that takes time, patience, perseverance, and something we can't always see when we're in it. A few years ago, my best friend was on a weight loss journey. I lived with her at the time and saw her every day. So I knew she was losing weight. Her clothes were telling us so. The scales were telling us so. But I couldn't see the transformation. She was still the same person she'd always been. It wasn't until we looked back at old photos of us together that we realised just how different she looked. In all honesty, it was like looking at a completely different person. Yet, because the change had been gradual, I hadn't noticed. And that's one of the reasons that I keep a diary. I've been on my own transformation journey over the last 8 years, since I first stepped through the doors of the Vineyard. But there are times that I feel like very little has changed, that I'm still the same messed up person I was back then. But then I look back at my old diaries and I can see the transformation clearly. It's so hard to see it, to feel it when you're in the middle of it, because there will always be something else that you want to be better at, to do better at. There's always that next thing that you need to change. But I think it's really important to remember that we're never going to be perfect. We're not designed for that. But it's so important to look back at the journey occasionally and remind yourself just how far you've come. Perseverance can be one of the greatest tools that you have when it comes to change. Sticking with it, even when change seems impossible. Or perhaps it feels like you're not getting anywhere. Keep going. As Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Sometimes it might feel like you're not getting anywhere. that you're not achieving anything, that change just isn't coming. But as that passage reminds us, the harvest is coming. Now, some of you may know that I am training to be a primary school teacher. And last year, I was a teaching assistant in year 1. This year, I'm in year 6, so very different ends of the school. And I don't get to see my little currently now year 2, so I don't get to see them very often anymore. And we had science evening on Thursday this week. We went back to school, and the children were invited to come back to school and do science experiments. And we had some invisible ink pens. You know, you write with the invisible ink, and you put the UV light on, and you can see the writing. And one of my little year 1, she's now year 2, she came in and she was really excited to have a go. And she wrote her name, and I said, "Oh wow, look at your handwriting, how amazing, how much it's changed." And she said to me, "Oh, close your eyes a second." So I closed my eyes. Couldn't see anything because she's writing in invisible ink, but closed my eyes. And then she did her D, and then she went, "Look, I can do my Ds the right way round." And then she did the same with her G's and her H's. And we were there for about 5 minutes with her showing me all these different letters. But the thing was that I'd spent a year with her last year trying to get her to write her letters the right way round. We had the frustration, I tell you, when I went home and she'd got it in the moment, and then she'd go to do her writing and they're all back to front. And the frustration of hers and mine, there were more than a few tears, I can tell you. But she was so excited to show me that this year she'd got it. She was so excited to say, "I have written all my letters the right way round." My work with her had stuck with her. She'd kept practicing and she'd got it. You know, I hadn't seen the results because I'd done my job, I'd moved on, I was now in a different class. I hadn't seen what she was doing. So I hadn't seen the benefits of what we'd been doing together, but she'd stuck with it, kept practicing, and she was now getting it right. So we were planting the seeds. Just as God plants the seeds of change in our own hearts, we just have to nurture them, water them, tend to them as they slowly start to grow and develop. We have to sit with the change and remember that growth doesn't happen overnight. God is watching your transformation, smiling proudly, just as I did with that little girl, at everything that has already changed in you and everything that will change in you in the future as you continue to journey with him. Never stop striving for change, but just remember that you're not doing it in your strength alone, but in relationship with him.